Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. The night it all began, June Hayward found herself at a rooftop bar with Athena Liu, celebrating Athena's lucrative Netflix deal. June, a writer herself, knew all too well the chasm that separated their careers. Athena, a literary darling with accolades piling high since college, possessed everything: a multi-book deal, prestigious residencies, and a cool, detached mystique that only amplified her fame. June, in contrast, was struggling. Her debut novel, Over the Sycamore, a critical and commercial flop. She felt a familiar sting of jealousy watching Athena, beautiful and untouchable, basking in her latest success. Their friendship was one of convenience, forged in freshman year dorms and shared writing seminars at Yale. Despite years of shared spaces and similar ambitions, their paths had diverged dramatically. June recounted her debut novel's painful journey: the initial excitement, the small press folding, the resale, and ultimately the disappointing sales and dwindling support. Athena, on the other hand, had skyrocketed to literary stardom with her debut, Voice and Echo, a novel celebrated for its unique blend of speculative and commercial fiction. Athena was not just talented, she was a phenomenon, effortlessly cool, internationally cultured, and strikingly beautiful. A Chinese Anne Hathaway, as Athena herself once joked. At the rooftop bar, Athena, already a few cocktails in, dismissed June's publishing woes with a careless wave, oblivious to the raw nerve she struck. Athena's tactlessness was a constant irritant in their friendship, yet June tolerated it, numbing her resentment with wine. Athena, oblivious to the concept of expensive, ordered another round, basking in the bartender's smile and the unsolicited champagne sent her way by an admirer. As Athena gushed about her Netflix deal, June grappled with a dark, simmering jealousy, a fear that she would never measure up, never be enough. She felt a disturbing, visceral urge to somehow inhabit Athena's perfect life. Athena, now quite drunk, began to ramble, her earlier coolness dissolving into a messy vulnerability. She spoke of mind sex with her editor, of feeling secretly hated, of fearing it all would blow up in her face. This dramatic self-deprecation was a familiar performance, leaving June unsure whether it was manipulation or genuine insecurity or both. They left the rooftop bar, feeling claustrophobic, and Athena, against June's better judgment, invited her back to her luxurious DuPont Circle apartment for amazing whiskey. Athena's apartment was a testament to her success, sleek, minimalist, and expensively appointed. A wine fridge, designer furniture, and even a humidifier for her calatheas spoke volumes. Athena offered June whiskey and then disappeared into the kitchen, leaving June to wander. Drawn by curiosity, June peeked into Athena's writing office, a meticulously curated space featuring a vintage typewriter, a stack of manuscript pages, and a sheet in the carriage with 2 words typed: "The End." Athena reappeared, bearing old fashions. She announced with drunken pride that the last front, her World War I novel, was finally finished. It was a massive stack of pages, visibly hefty, a project shrouded in secrecy for 2 years. Athena, eager for validation, pressed June to read it, but June, fueled by alcohol and jealousy, demurred, claiming she couldn't read drunk. Instead, they sprawled on the couch, laughing and gossiping like giddy teenagers. For the first time, June felt genuinely relaxed in Athena's company, unguarded, almost herself. They made pandan pancakes, the neon green batter sizzling on the pan. As they launched into a pancake-eating contest, Athena suddenly clutched her throat, a muted, sickening rasp escaping her lips. Athena was choking. Panic seized June. She vaguely recalled the Heimlich maneuver from grade school, but her mind was a blur. She wrapped her arms around Athena, jerking her hands against her stomach, but it was no use. Athena shook her head, face contorted in terror, pointing frantically at June's phone. "Help! Help!" June's fingers trembled as she dialed 911. Athena, face now purple, was desperately attempting the Heimlich on herself against a chair. Her movements became frantic, grotesque. "What is your location?" The dispatcher's voice was insistent, demanding. June, disoriented and panicked, struggled to recall Athena's address, fumbling for landmarks: the taco place, the bookstore, DuPont Circle, the Madison apartment building. 907, she gasped, finally remembering the floor, the view from the balcony. "Please, come quick, oh my God." "Is the patient conscious?" June glanced back. Athena had stopped kicking. Her shoulders heaved in wild, possessed jerks, then stilled. "Ma'am?" the dispatcher repeated. June shook Athena's shoulder, limp, unresponsive. She pressed her fingers to Athena's neck, no pulse. Athena's eyes were wide, bulging, fixed in a horrifying, unseeing stare. The dispatcher's voice faded into a bewildering blur as the apartment door banged open and the EMTs rushed in, their arrival marking the beginning of a long, grim night. It was dawn when June was finally released. The EMTs, methodical and detached, had documented every detail of Athena's death, choking on a pancake, a globule lodged in her throat. June gave a statement, her words echoing in her own ears, detached and surreal. Athena Liu, 27, female, dead. The officer who drove her home offered perfunctory condolences, words that meant nothing. June stumbled into her apartment, the nightmarish images seared into her mind. Tossed carelessly in her bag, Athena's manuscript lay like a heavy weight, a silent witness to the night's horrifying events. June awoke to a world altered, yet strangely unchanged. Mourning for Athena was a peculiar state, a muted shock rather than a deep, gut-wrenching grief. Athena, a friend of circumstance, not a confidant, left a void that was more bewildering than heartbreaking. June was haunted less by loss and more by the visceral memory of Athena's final moments, the drumming feet, the clawing hands, the bulging, lifeless eyes. "What the fuck?" became a recurring mantra in her days. Her phone buzzed incessantly with condolences and morbid curiosity. Rory, ever the concerned sister, urged her to seek therapy and support groups, but these felt performative, assuming a depth of friendship that wasn't there. June found herself strangely resilient, her grief manifesting as a detached awe at the absurdity of it all. Only once did she crack, consumed by guilt, replaying Heimlich tutorials, convinced she could have saved Athena. Rory's firm reassurances offered temporary solace, a child's simple faith against a world suddenly too complex. Driven by a strange impulse, June crafted a carefully worded Twitter thread about the tragic accident, echoing bereavement cliches, expressing shock and loss, carefully omitting the messy, drunken details. The tweet garnered unprecedented attention, a flood of likes and condolences from literary figures and strangers alike. This unexpected surge of online validation was unsettling, exciting, and distasteful in equal measure. Athena's funeral was a somber affair, mostly attended by older Asian community members. Mrs. Liu, tear-stricken, invited June to speak, introducing her as Athena's closest friend. Tears flowed easily as June delivered a eulogy, portraying Athena as a dazzling, untouchable star, basking in the hollow comfort of performing grief. Later, Mrs. Liu's tear-stained mascara left indelible marks on June's blouse, a persistent reminder of the performance. Canceling her tutoring sessions, June retreated to her apartment, cocooned in pajamas, adrift in a sea of Chipotle and The Office reruns. Then, Athena's manuscript called to her. The last front was a revelation, a masterpiece. The story of the forgotten Chinese labor corps resonated with a raw, visceral power. Athena's prose was assured, mature, devastatingly beautiful. June was captivated, drawn into the narrative, weeping at the tragic fates of a gang in Shaoli. Yet the manuscript was unfinished, a tapestry of brilliant sentences and incomplete scenes. An idea sparked in June's mind, a lark, a writing exercise. She would just fill in the blanks, polish the rough edges, bring Athena's vision to its full potential. It started as an experiment with a single chapter, but soon she was consumed, rewriting, editing, and expanding, working day and night. It felt natural, ordained, like she was meant to complete Athena's story, perhaps even get it published in Athena's name. In 3 weeks, a first draft emerged, transformed, reshaped by June's hand. After a week's break, she printed the manuscript, marking it up with a red pen, then meticulously incorporated the revisions. An email to Brett, her agent, followed, the manuscript attached, a bold gamble. She couldn't explain the truth, not yet. She presented the last front as her own, a new voice she had discovered. Waiting for Brett's response was agonizing, a torment of anxiety and anticipation. Brett's reply was cautiously enthusiastic, calling it special, suggesting wider submission, and offering light editorial suggestions. His edits were minor, mostly pacing cuts and clarifications. June, fueled by canned espressos and a strange sense of purpose, worked through them in 3 days. The revisions flowed easily, a stark contrast to the agonizing struggle of her own writing. It was exhilarating, liberating, like shaping someone else's clay, sharpening someone else's gems. The manuscript was resubmitted, first to her uninterested editor, Garrett, who predictably passed. Then, Brett unleashed it upon his reach list, a half-dozen senior editors at powerhouse publishers. Weeks later, an offer landed from HarperCollins, then Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, Amazon, a flurry of interest that escalated into an auction. The last front sold to Eden Press, a prestigious indie publisher, for a sum that defied June's wildest dreams. A splashy announcement in Publishers Weekly followed. Brett spoke of foreign rights, film rights, a whirlwind of opportunities. June called her mother and sister, bragging, finally tasting the sweet validation she had craved for so long. She quit her tutoring job at Veritas College Institute. Writing friends offered congratulations, laced with thinly veiled envy. She went out for celebratory drinks, basking in the attention, the toast of the town. Inside, a triumphant voice echoed, "I've made it. I've fucking made it. I'm living Athena's life." June wrestled with the accusations echoing in her mind: thief, plagiarizer, racist. She constructed elaborate justifications. Plagiarism was too simple. She had rewritten, reshaped, and wansongden Athena's chaotic draft. It was a collaboration, a rescue mission of a half-finished masterpiece. And Athena, after all, was thanked in the acknowledgments. She even spun a narrative of Athena wanting this, envisioning it as a grand literary prank, a blurring of authorial lines, a source of future scholarly debate. It was a flimsy justification, a desperate attempt to soothe her conscience. But the truth was, she was too exhilarated to be consumed by guilt. Writing, for the first time in months, felt joyous, a second chance, a validation of her long-dormant dreams. She felt infused with Athena's talent, writing for both of them, carrying on a torch. Yet a darker, more honest justification lurked beneath the surface. She recalled a philosophy student she dated at Yale, whose research centered on moral obligations to the deceased. His arguments resonated. We owe nothing to the dead, especially when the dead are thieves and liars too. And fuck it, June admitted. Taking Athena's manuscript felt like reparations, payback for all the good things Athena had effortlessly claimed, all the success that had been unjustly denied to June. Publishing moved at a glacial pace, punctuated by bursts of frantic activity. The 15 months between contract and release stretched out, filled with edits, marketing meetings, and a constant hum of anticipation. Daniela Woodhouse, her editor at Eden Press, was a sharp, no-nonsense force, a welcome contrast to the indifferent Garrett. Daniela's edits were insightful, focused on clarity and pacing, cutting through Athena's stylistic indulgences. June found herself making significant changes, streamlining the narrative, clarifying confusing character names, softening the language, even altering the ending. Athena's draft ended with a didactic, history paper-esque conclusion, detailing the laborer's forgotten plight. Daniela urged a more poignant, character-driven ending, suggesting focusing on a gang's return journey. June agreed, adding a single, powerful line from a laborer's letter as an epilogue. Daniela praised her revisions, her ease of collaboration, fueling June's growing confidence. The process was transformative. June immersed herself in the history of the Chinese Labor Corps, becoming intimately familiar with Athena's source material. Editing Athena's manuscript felt like a masterclass, honing her own skills, sharpening her prose. She began to believe in her own talent, recognizing her contributions to the text, sentences and scenes that were entirely her own. But a nagging fear persisted. No one would ever truly see her work, only Athena's shadow looming over it all. To preempt any suspicion, June meticulously crafted a public persona, emphasizing her close friendship with Athena. Exaggerated anecdotes, carefully curated social media posts, and performative grief became her shield. She played the grieving friend, the inheritor of Athena's legacy, subtly weaving their connection into her narrative. She researched tirelessly, becoming an expert on the Chinese Labor Corps, even attempting and failing to learn Mandarin. A scholarship in Athena's name at the Asian American Writers Collective served as further public relations, a tangible display of her generosity. Then, a headline in the Yale Daily News sent a shiver of dread down her spine. Yale acquires Athena Liu's drafting notes. Athena's Moleskine notebooks filled with outlines and brainstorming were being archived at Yale, a public archive, a potential time bomb. Panic seized June. She called Mrs. Liu, feigning concern, subtly planting the idea that public access to Athena's raw, unfiltered notebooks would be a violation, a putting her corpse on display. Mrs. Liu, weary and grieving, readily agreed, offering June the notebooks themselves. Tempted but wary, June declined, suggesting they remain within the family, knowing full well there was no family left. She subtly steered Mrs. Liu toward the idea of destroying them, playing on her fears, her desire to protect Athena's memory. Mrs. Liu, distraught and suggestible, succumbed. The notebooks, the potential evidence, would be erased. A few weeks later, the Marlin Archive website reflected the quiet disappearance of the Athena Liu collection. The Yale Daily News announcement vanished, a broken link, a story erased. June had dodged a bullet, but the chilling realization of how close she had come to exposure lingered. The publicity and marketing teams at Eden Press, enthusiastic and efficient, outlined a comprehensive campaign for The Last Front. But a discordant note was struck when they broached the topic of positioning. Concerns about cultural authenticity surfaced, anxieties about writing outside her lane as a white author. A suggestion was floated: rebrand as Juniper Song, adopt a pen name that hinted at a more worldly, perhaps even Asian, identity. Juniper Song, they reasoned, sounded native almost. June bristled at the suggestion, yet she agreed. She penned an article for Electric Lit, crafting a narrative of self-reinvention, of honoring her mother's Song middle name, of embracing her heritage. It was a carefully constructed performance, a subtle dance around the truth. A sensitivity reader, Candace Lee, was suggested by Daniela's assistant, but June, emboldened by her carefully constructed persona, pushed back, dismissing the need. Candace persisted, emphasizing the risk of cultural appropriation and cultural leeching. June, annoyed and dismissive, refused. Candace was taken off the project. The copy editing pass arrived, and with it a sense of grim inevitability. The machine was in motion, the lie was set in stone. There was no turning back. The transformation into Juniper Song was underway. Author photos were retaken, portraying a more worldly, ambiguous persona. Social media was meticulously curated, echoing Athena's online presence, engaging in performative allyship, cultivating a following that would validate her new identity. The marketing machine for The Last Front roared to life. ARCs were sent, glowing endorsements secured, ads plastered across Goodreads, Amazon, Facebook, even subway stations. Barnes & Noble prepared a special signed edition. Pre-orders surged, fueling June's intoxicating sense of validation. This was the publishing experience she had always dreamed of, a stark contrast to the quiet failure of her debut. Early reviews poured in, overwhelmingly positive. Goodreads exploded with praise, a euphoric rush of validation for June. Then, a single one-star review appeared, penned by Candace Lee. It was Candace, her former editorial nemesis, delivering a deliberate personal blow. Daniela, alerted by June, promised to handle it internally, further solidifying June's sense of vindication. Launch day arrived, a stark contrast to the muted disappointment of her debut. Champagne flowed, congratulations flooded in, and Politics and Prose, a prestigious bookstore, was packed for her launch event. Standing at the podium, basking in the warm applause, June felt she had finally made it. She read an excerpt, the audience rapt, engaged. The Q&A was a triumph, her answers witty, thoughtful, charming. She was in command, the center of attention, finally experiencing the literary stardom she had so desperately craved. Then she saw her in the front row, unmistakable, emerald shawl draped over her shoulders, black hair gleaming, berry red lips curled in a familiar, unsettling smile. Athena. The world tilted. Dizziness washed over June. She stumbled through the rest of the event, her carefully constructed composure crumbling. During the signing, she was a nervous wreck, fumbling names, her mind consumed by the impossible sight of Athena in the crowd. Back home, a full-blown panic attack seized her, the nightmarish vision of Athena's return refusing to dissipate. The Last Front hit number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Daniela's congratulatory email felt like a coronation. June was a best-selling author. She had arrived. Calls to her mother and sister, quitting her tutoring job, drinks with envious colleagues, all felt like a dream. She had made it. She was living Athena's life. Weeks blurred into a whirlwind of literary events, conferences, and parties. Suddenly, June was in, courted by agents, editors, and fellow authors who had previously ignored her. At BookCon, she mingled with literary luminaries, basking in the glow of their acceptance. Even Garrett, her former editor, reappeared, eager to bask in her reflected glory. June, basking in her newfound success, savored her revenge. Royalty statements arrived. The last front had earned out. June was making real money, finally tasting the fruits of her stolen labor. She splurged: a new laptop, a nicer apartment, designer clothes, even a liquor cabinet. Student loans were paid off, health insurance secured, cavities filled. She was living the life she had always envisioned. But the internet, as always, had its detractors. Negative reviews surfaced, accusing her of uninspired colonizer trash, white woman exploitation, and worse, stuck-up, obnoxious bitch. Adele Sparks Sato, the acid-tongued critic, published a scathing review in the LA Review of Books decrying The Last Front as historical exploitation. A YouTube video by Kimberly Deng dissected cultural mistakes in the novel, fueling a tide of online criticism. Xiao Chen, the diaspora firebrand, declared the book should never have been published, accusing June of unexamined fetish for feminine-looking Asian men. The Annie Waters scene, the missionary girl and the laborers, became a flashpoint, a symbol of June's perceived cultural insensitivity, spawning memes and accusations of racism. June, rattled, sought solace in Eden's Angels, her group chat with Marnie Kimball and Jen Walker, who offered dismissive comfort, blaming jealousy and misogyny. A speaking engagement at Harvard offered a chance for direct confrontation. A student, Lily Wu, challenged her directly, questioning her right as a white author to tell this story. June, prepared, delivered a carefully rehearsed defense of artistic freedom, of empathy, of the importance of telling untold histories. The audience responded with mixed reactions, but June, in her own mind, had won. The Cambridge event, however, left a bitter taste. An invitation from the Chinese-American Social Club of Rockville seemed like an opportunity for redemption, a chance to prove her good intentions, but the event turned into a humiliating farce. Susan Lee, the organizer, greeted her with thinly veiled suspicion, assuming she was Chinese, then Korean. The audience, mostly older Chinese Americans, were polite but distant. Mr. Lee, whose uncle had been a laborer, offered a poignant moment of validation, thanking June for telling their story. But his gratitude only amplified June's guilt. She fled the event, overwhelmed by a crushing sense of fraudulence. Haunted by the encounter, June began to withdraw from public life, canceling events, retreating into isolation. She was selling well, but the accolades felt hollow, tainted by the accusations. Then the Yale Daily News article about Athena's archived notebooks resurfaced in her mind. A chilling thought took root. Perhaps the notebooks held the key to her salvation or her ultimate downfall. Driven by a desperate need to control the narrative, June concocted a plan, a dangerous gamble to confront the past and secure her future. If you enjoyed this book breakdown, please consider liking this video and subscribing to get notified when we post our next book.